Okay, I think we are ready to start. Welcome back from the coffee break. It's always difficult, but thank you for joining us back in. We are about to start with the second part of today's session with our first forum discussion. So as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be broadcasted and used as a video for the knowledge transfer and the peer learning from now on. So let me just mention once again that over the past 2 years, the remote IT network has brought together 8 different European cities, from Brindisi to Dubrovnik to Tartu to Tirana, Murcia, Bucharest, District 6, Camara de Lobos, Heraklion, to explore how the remote and hybrid work are reshaping our cities, our economies, and the ways we live and work. A crucial part of that transformation is happening not only in the private companies and among digital nomads, but also inside our public administrations themselves. Cities and national governments across Europe are rethinking how public services are organized and delivered, how teams collaborate, and how the institutions remain responsive and trusted in a world where work is no longer tied just to the desk. Our panel today, The Hybrid City, the rethinking work in the public sector, looks at this internal transformation within the cities. We are going to examine how the administrations are designing and implementing the hybrid and remote work, how they're navigating cultural and legal shifts, and how these changes are perceived by the citizens, by the political leaders, and the society at large. Perhaps most importantly, we will also reflect on what these changes actually mean for the future of the public services. Its flexibility, its resilience, and its ability to attract and retain talent within the public administrations itself. We are joined today by the 3 outstanding speakers who each bring a very unique perspective on this transformation from different levels of governments and different parts of Europe. So first, we are going to hear from Ms. Ivana Nagy, Head of Digital Economy Sector at the Ministry of Justice, Public Administration and Digital Transformation of Croatia. Ivana leads strategic planning and digital economy policy. She's overseeing key reforms and investments under Croatia's Recovery and Resilience Plan. And she was also responsible for introducing the smart working model across the Croatian civil service, designed to boost flexibility and productivity without increasing time spent in the office. After Ivana, we are going to hear from Bo van Beesing, the policy officer in the strategic cell of the city of Roeselare in Belgium. Bo works at the intersection of policy, innovation, and European cooperation, coordinating the city's smart city initiatives and the rollout of hybrid work. Her work focuses on making this transformation tangible for both staff, and citizens, with a very strong emphasis on efficiency, trust, and transparency. And then last but not least, we will hear from our third speaker, Kertu Ahuna, an employee experience manager at the Tartu city government in Estonia. I will repeat that again. An employee experience manager within the public administration. I love it. Kertu has long been dedicated to building a positive organizational culture and promoting employee well-being in her city. She played a key role in shaping Tartu's remote work practices and now is coordinating the city's work within the remote IT network. I will now invite, in the same order as presented, one by one the speaker, to do their own presentation, after which we will move into the moderated discussion and open the floor to the audience questions. So, Ms. Ivana Nagy, thanks.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody again. It's a pleasure to join this this final conference focusing on remote IT and to have the opportunity to share our experience from the civil service perspective. So in the morning we heard, it's not changing. Sorry. This is start two.
Mijenja na kompjuteru, ne mijenja na ekranu.
Just a little technical glitch. So. Okay, so in the morning we had a chance to hear from the stakeholders that were making sort of a conducive environment for the digital nomads. And my presentation focuses on how we try to make a flexible working environment within the civil service, so within the public administration. And my presentation refers actually not to the entire public services in Croatia, but specifically to the civil service, which we have around 25,000 civil servants in Croatia. And the public services are quite a bit bigger than that. We have around 250,000 public servants, like from hospitals, education, and so on. So my presentation focuses on the hybrid working model in the civil service. And as we heard in the morning session, a lot of these changes and shifts towards hybrid work were brought upon by the COVID pandemic. So it occurred like that in Croatia as well. We had another moment that we had to deal with around the same time. Two very large earthquakes hit the capital city in Croatia, Zagreb, and many of the public government buildings were actually damaged or destroyed. So we had this additional challenge to try to cope with, including the pandemic. So this was one of the main reasons that we started this reform, but it was actually part of a bigger civil service reform in the sense of human resources management that we started around 2020, 2021, which actually encompassed not only trying to bring flexible working arrangements, but a change in the wage setting system, a change in the competency framework, a change in the recruitment process, and also in the performance monitoring of work in the civil service. So it kind of all came together, and the flexible working arrangements were just one part of that. So around that time, we made a large survey across the civil services to try to find out how they were coping with remote work and working from home during the pandemic and the earthquake. And we found that actually what we managed to do is that the civil servants adapted quite quickly, and that there was no disturbance in continuity of public services in Croatia due to these two effects. So we were quite encouraged by those early reports, and the survey also showed us that the civil servants were quite positive and had a relatively positive attitude towards remote working, and that also a large majority of them wanted to continue some sort of hybrid working model even after the pandemic and after the offices were ready for them to return as well. And one of the main reasons that was listed by the civil servants was the fact that they had to spend quite a lot of time commuting to and from work. So we have in Croatia around 60 government bodies that are mainly centered in Zagreb, and we found in this survey that per month, 1 week per month was spent actually by the civil servants commuting, so around 40 working hours each month. So this was listed as one of the main reasons that the civil servants preferred some sort of possibility to work from home. So we actually at that time we utilized the recovery and resilience facility that was offered by the European Commission, and we negotiated within our recovery and resilience plan as part of the entire civil service reform also this introduction of the flexible working model and hybrid work, and we agreed on 2 targets with the European Commission, and one was to have, by the 3rd quarter of 2023, to have at least 20% of the civil servants using the hybrid work model, and also to have at least 60% of them trained properly trained how to utilize smart working. We called it we call the hybrid working model a smart working model. So these are our 2 very fixed targets, and everybody that maybe had a chance to work under the recovery and resilience plan knows that the payments are made conditional to achieving the targets. So it was quite a big part that we knew we had to achieve that. And it was really a big task for us because it entailed quite a big cultural shift in the civil service. I don't know how it is in your countries, but in Croatia, the structure of the civil service is quite an older population. For example, we know that in the 5 years from now, 1 out of 5 civil servants will retire. So we have quite an old structure of the civil service, and it was one of the challenges that we had to address also in implementing this reform. So how we implemented it, we knew from other similar projects that unless we had some kind of common framework for the entire civil service, for the entire 60 government bodies, that it would be quite difficult to achieve. So we started with changing the legal framework, the HR policies, the regulations and the guidelines. So this was one of the main things that we did. We started very early on. Also, we committed to introduce new IT infrastructure in the civil service. We already had quite good digital applications and digital tools, so this was one of the key enablers that actually made remote work possible even in the COVID time. So the digital procedures that were already in place in many government bodies. So this was a nice precondition. What we also did is, using the money from the Recovery and Resilience Facility, we equipped additionally the state institutions with laptops, monitors, facilities for video conferencing, digital applications and things like this. So we had around a little bit more than 9 million euros available through the Recovery and Resilience Facility. Also, the cybersecurity was strengthened through this project. We had to take care quite a lot for the secure connections and this kind of thing, because of course the government business cannot be conducted unsafely. So this was a big part of the project as well. And we started with a pilot which was voluntary for all the government institutions. They could join in the beginning if they like, so it was not mandatory for them. And we started with 8, but we ended up with 21 institutions in the pilot. And after 1 year, we fully adopted the legal framework, and then it became mandatory for all the state bodies. But we started smaller, and then as we progressed and the state bodies saw really some benefit in the way that they conduct business, then more and more institutions joined. And what we also had, we had a network of managers that were responsible for HR in the civil service, and this is mainly the general secretariats of the ministries and the various agencies. So they were our first network through which we went about how to introduce this smart working model. We also introduced employee training, quite extensive. As if you remember from the slide previous, we had to train quite a lot of civil servants for this. And we started really full out trainings, which we conducted mainly online. We had, for some trainings, we had more than 1,000 participants per session. We offered 4 courses, one general, one that was specifically targeted for HR personnel, one training course that was targeted to management roles, and in order to be able to manage the smart working effectively, and one which was addressing digital literacy and cybersecurity. So the 4 courses, and they're still available through our public administration school as online courses. And everybody that comes into the civil service now newly has to, if they want to work hybridly, they have to complete this course within the 6 months time in order to qualify to work hybridly. And then we also developed all kinds of guidance materials, and we provided some hands-on support to all the ministries on how to implement the smart working. I actually brought some of the materials, printed materials, with me, and they're available here. But we have them all online. If you go to the ministry's website and type smart working, then you can access the guidance framework. We have tools, for example, to assess which type of work is possible to do remotely and which is not possible, and these kinds of things. So we have some tools to assist the process. And what we outlined in the legal framework is this model that we call 1 + 2 + 2, and it's not actually our invention. We took it from the Slovenian model, which they also around the same time tried to introduce hybrid work in the civil service, and as many other countries have. I remember around that time, it was during the French, I think, EU presidency. They even did quite an extensive survey on hybrid working models across the EU. So we used those results as well to help us build our model. And what we have in the legal framework is this 2 types of smart working. One is occasional and one is temporary. Occasional means that you spend some time per week in the office and some time either working from home or working remotely. So this is this 1 + 2 + 2. It means that you have to spend 1 day mandatory in the office, 2 days at home, and 2 days as per agreement with your manager. And temporary is a model that can be used, for example, for parents of small children or caregivers or somebody that has to take care of another family member. They can apply. If they qualify, then they can be granted temporary hybrid work arrangement. It means that they work from home or remotely for a certain period of time without having the need to come to the office. And we distinguish also in the legal framework this work from home and remote work. It's mainly for some legal reasons, but most of the civil servants choose this this first option, work from home. It means they have to disclose the location from which they work. They have to comply with certain health and safety regulations. And of course, the cybersecurity protocols and measures apply to them. And the personnel from the ministry, for example, has the right to check if these conditions are met or not met. And remote work is actually meaning you can work from everywhere, from anywhere within Croatia. You don't have to disclose the location, but only certain types of jobs are possible for this type of working. And as far as I know, most of the civil servants choose this first option, working from home. So, what were really our key enablers and challenges that we faced? I mentioned previously the enablers were really this strong digital infrastructure and tools that we had. The pilot helped us greatly with the change in the mindsets. Leadership commitment as well, because we had quite a strong commitment from the central government to implement this hybrid work model, because it was part of the recovery and resilience plan. So we had a lot of help from them in coordinating all the ministries and all the state bodies. And I think what really helped us is that we came up very early on with this common legal framework and guidelines that everybody could apply. It means that everybody would be on the same footing and not sort of wonder around what kind of things could they implement or not. And we faced challenges, and we still do. We have this still a portion of the managers particularly which favor this older management style and presence over really an output-based approach. So, and one thing I forgot to say, but it's really key, is in the legal framework and in practice, hybrid working is not a right that is given to the civil servants. So it's not automatically you come into the civil service and you have the right to work hybridly. No, it's conditional upon the job that you do and upon the agreement with the manager, and you have to fit certain criteria. But it is encouraged, like I said. So we put forward a very strong monitoring system from the beginning, and we demanded that each institution reach this 20% at least personnel working from home, and if not, then we had a lot of discussions with them. Well, why not? Why is this department not working hybridly? Is there a problem with the manager? And so on. But it's a challenge, and there are still pockets within the civil service that don't look upon kindly to hybrid working, but more and more have embraced it, because it really turned out that it's one of the key differentiating factors when somebody enters the civil service. Then they much rather go to a position and to a manager that allows this kind of flexibility in hybrid work. So we see that as well happening within the civil service, and it's also helped us to attract more younger people. I know of cases, for example, in the tax administration in Croatia, but otherwise as well, where they have much more applicants per job now than they have had previously because of this option and flexibility to work hybridly. So it's one thing to look forward. If you remember, like I said, we have quite an old population of the civil servants, and we expect many of them to retire in the next year. So we have to think about attracting people and talent to replace them. So what is the future outlook? This is my last slide. I mean, how we look at it. Of course, for us, being on the public euro, let's say, we always have to think about transparency and accountability for the work that we do. So ensuring quality and access of public services is unconditional, so it has to be met. It's the first priority. So the clear KPIs and the performance indicators for hybrid work are very important. We don't differentiate from the side of the performance framework between hybrid work and work in the office. So you have to meet certain standards wherever you work. but it's now been kind of altered to measure this much more tangibly. So regular reporting and audits, and of course, like I said, to maintain this citizen accessibility. This year, we did 2 surveys to assess the satisfaction of citizens with the public services and to assess the satisfaction of civil servants with working in the civil service. And we saw, compared to a couple of years ago, that both of these have risen quite substantially. So the satisfaction with the services that are provided has risen quite considerably this year, but also from the well-being survey that we did this year, for the civil servants also, they expressed quite a higher satisfaction in working in the civil service. And we think that it's also part because of this flexibility and possibility to work hybridly. So we take that as an encouraging sign because, of course, we think that the more satisfied the employees are, the better work they will do. So we take that as a positive sign, and we plan to continue with this kind of encouragement. So to promote this kind of agile and efficient civil service in the future. And of course, we look at it also as a good investment towards more digital literacy and digital skills, and in working with collaboration tools and so on. So we take all this kind of positively from this project that we had. So if you have any questions, we will have a panel afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think we will move straight to the second speaker, Ms. Bo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Bo, and I work for the city of Roeselare. Roeselare is a city located in the west side of Belgium. It's about 65,000 inhabitants, so we usually use the term medium-sized city. Most of our employees are local people who live pretty close to City Hall, who come to work by bike. But we still have invested strongly in hybrid working since the very beginning. You will hear a lot of similarities to the other speakers and the things we heard in the partners from the partners from Remote IT this morning. And I think that's a good sign. It means that we all use the same principles and that they are working. So I'll take you back. For the start, I'll take you back to 2011 when we started it in Roeselare. Then I'll talk a bit about the mainstreaming of hybrid working in our city. What is the human impact? What is the human story? What is the impact on our citizens? What is the impact on our civil servants? And then I'll zoom out a bit to the Flemish context, give you some background of what is happening on a more regional level in our country. And then finally, I'll look ahead to the future. So we start with Roeselare as a pioneer. We go back to 2011 when my colleagues from the HR department introduced a new experiment that they wanted to test out. They wanted to increase flexibility for working, and they started with some experimentations that first started with what we call time-independent working, so people could work whenever they wanted. You had to work 8 hours a day, but when you did that, that was either if you were an early bird, you could start at 5 in the morning and finish shortly after lunchtime. If you're more an evening person, you could just start after lunch and work till late at night. The only limitations there were basically what is not considered night work according to the law. So whenever it was acceptable by the law, you could do your work. After introducing this time-independent working, we decided to also experiment with place-independent working. So we introduced a new principle. You can work when and where you want, as long as you perform and deliver the outputs that you need to deliver. But always with one exception, you have to make sure that our services for the citizens are guaranteed. So they need to be able to call our services when they want to, when the opening hours are of the City Hall, and they need to be able to reach people in the City Hall. So there always have to be people in the office or at the desks at the front office so they can be helped. So the citizen can't have any impact from us working at different times. Since then, we focused on delivering results, quality of work, rather than delivering time. It's not about sitting behind your desk and staring at a screen. It's about the output you deliver, whether you do that from home or whether you do that from City Hall. Actually doesn't really matter as long as we deliver. And that's also the idea that was behind this. This was a very flexible system. Like if you wanted to work 4 days a week of 10 hours and you could deliver everything, if you want to take Wednesday off every week, you could work 10 hours the other days and make sure you have all the outputs delivered. Or you don't like working on a Friday afternoon, so you would always just work a bit more on Monday so you got it over with, and then take the Friday afternoon off. That was all possible in this early system. But as I said, this was like an experiment, and we started like introducing this on a large scale. But most employees weren't very excited about it yet. It was a couple of believers that used the system, but most people just went into the office, liked the structure of having a day from 9 to 5 and working those hours. So there was only a select group actually making use of this system. But then, as all of you know, and the story you've heard today as well, COVID happened. And so everyone started to work from home from one day to the other. Everyone worked from home all the time. A lot of people discovered this possibility for remote work, and a lot of them became believers who weren't believers beforehand. But also others realized it wasn't for them. They liked coming into the office. They liked having the contact with their colleagues. So there was two big groups, I would say. But we also noticed in COVID that the rules blurred a bit. That was normal. You were at home with children, so we started combining childcare with working from home, which sometimes impacted output from different employees. Also, we started introducing new digital tools. Certain tools like Teams or SharePoint became daily use rather than beforehand. We didn't have those digital systems that were as developed as they are now. So the tools were there, so it made it a lot easier to work from home, and a lot more people started doing it. But we started with a lot of freedom, as I said, but having it mainstreamed, we noticed that we needed some more boundaries. There were some challenges to having this completely flexible system where basically everyone could work when and where they wanted. And we still believe in this idea of flexibility, but it needed a little bit more of a framework to give managers tools to work with, to also see that people who benefit from working from home can be encouraged, but people who potentially also need some more people around them, some encouragement in the office, could be encouraged to come to the office. In addition, it was also important that we had enough people there in like the peak times of services. And we noticed that some of the managers didn't have the tools to force people to come into the office. And sometimes there were too little people in the afternoon or too little people early in the morning. So we started introducing some new rules, making it possible for the managers to enforce that. Because sometimes it happened that one colleague always worked mornings and the other colleague always works afternoons, and they never see each other anymore. Even though if they come into the office 1 or 2 days a week, if they work different times, you don't see each other, and that didn't facilitate teamwork very well. So after strictening or like introducing some boundaries, we introduced a new framework which has more stricter rules. We have now, like, you can only work between 7 in the morning and 7 at night, so you can't start at 5 and work until 10 anymore, so the time frame has shortened a bit. And we've also introduced that you can only work 2 days a week from a different location. This is an average, so for example, you could do 1 week working from home and then 2 weeks in the office as well. That's also an option, so it's an average time that we use. We've also changed, I heard it from Ivana's presentation earlier as well, it's no longer a right, it's a favor that we grant to our employees. If they offer us a lot of flexibility, the employer will give that flexibility back. If an employee is not willing to adapt or accommodate colleagues or public service, we also have methods to intervene now and to encourage people to be motivated and committed to being in the office. Of course, this change also had an impact on people because we went from very flexible possibilities, like people never working on a Wednesday afternoon. We don't have school, so a lot of parents like having that option of working from home or being home, not working at all. But so it felt like a loss to a couple of people, but at the same time, other people encouraged this framework. It's clearer. They know what the rules are, what is possible, what is not possible. And managers also have tools to work with, because managers still have the option to give an exception to everything. But it's turned around, whereas before you had to really enforce that people had to come into the office for certain days. Now it's more, in theory, you can work from home for 2 days, but a manager can allow to work from home for more, or you're allowed to work from a different location than your home address, but you just have to ask in advance. It depends on how flexible you are, and the system works quite well in this way. We see that the managers are quite happy with these new rules, but we also have political representatives in most of our cities. You can feel a shift there as well in their perspective. In the beginning, they were more in favor of the working from home. Now you notice more that they really appreciate seeing the work, having it visible, that people are working in the city hall, and sometimes they perceive not being there as you're not working. So it's important to commit to explaining that we work on an output base, that they can see the results, and that we clearly communicate that. So it's important that we keep an open dialogue on this topic, because we have this tension between autonomy and control, being present, seeing it. And it's an evolution we've definitely noticed once it became more mainstream in the city. Well, then, for every city, I think it is citizens first. So the important thing is that our citizens don't notice whether you're working from City Hall or working from home. As long as they see someone in front of them, someone is helping with their questions, someone is delivering quality services, that's the important thing. They don't really care about our internal framework as long as they are helped when needed. So we've set up a lot of digital tools that can support that. We have phone calls are sent through Teams to your home location, so they don't notice if this person is in the office or working from home or a different location. All the digital tools are in place, and we allow all our systems to be accessible from home, so you can deliver the same quality of work. But always this idea of service first and then workplace second. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Flemish context. Actually, a lot of the things that they apply in the Flemish context are the same as what we do in Roeselare. This focus on output-based working, delivery of services to citizens, rather than creating this time you need to be working in the office. But in the Flemish context, we are looking at a bit of a wider region, whereas in the Roeselare, I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of our employees actually work quite close to the city hall. You can bike to work. It's not that big of a commute. We don't have a lot of sustainability options to gain. Like if people don't take a car, it doesn't impact Roeselare as much. But in a Flemish context, it is the case. So they've introduced a system of having satellite offices throughout the country. So you can decide whether you want to work from home, but you can also work in the main office in Brussels, but you can also work from a satellite building which is located somewhere else in Flanders. And this allows you to lower the commute, but still have this well-equipped workplace to go to. Another system that they've introduced is actually because people work from home, they have less desks in the office. So they are reimbursing employees that work from home. So you get money for your electricity if you work a certain amount of months from home. You get money for your internet bill if you work from home. So they've introduced some incentives to actually encourage people to work from home rather than the other way around, encourage them to come to the office, because that way they save on cost in infrastructure. I'm now going to look ahead what is in the future for us as Roeselare. We have chosen to go for a more balanced hybrid work system. So from complete flexibility to a system with some more rules, but it's clearer for everyone. We have more rules in terms of how much overtime you can work during the week, but we still allow some flexibility, whereas in the beginning it was completely open. Now there's about 10 days a year that you can use as flexibility days that you say, oh, these days I won't come into the office and I will use my overtime, or I will have 20 half days. So I still have that flexibility, that good work-life balance, and I can work from home for 2 days a week as well. So we won't be returning to what we did pre-2011, but we won't be returning to what we did between 2011 and 2020. We will still remain output-driven. So we want to keep doing that. We want to encourage managers to evaluate people on outputs rather than time present. And we want to keep using it as a method for employer branding. It's something I've heard with the other speakers as well. It's about attracting and retaining talent. And if we are looking in the pool of talent of people who live 15 minutes away from the office in Roeselare, there's a lot of talent there, but there's a lot more in the surrounding areas as well. So as a way of encouraging people who come from further away to come and work for our city, to create that work-life balance, we actively choose to promote hybrid working as a part of our employer branding strategy as well. So we choose to have good public service, but also have a good HR management for the people that work with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I will call in for the third speaker.
Good day, everyone. My name is Gertu, and as Alisa mentioned, I have this weird work position for a public sector institution, so employee experience manager. So it's part of HR work, but it's a step further ahead to also talk about the experience in the public sector and not only about HR management. And we see these new interesting positions popping up in Estonia among public sectors. So it's a field that it's like growing. So I will have a very similar story. We have talked a lot about these journeys today, how institutions or organizations go into remote working. And well, this is ours. This is Tartu's journey. And to give you a little bit of context, Tartu is Estonia's second biggest city. We have about 100,000 inhabitants. And in our city government, we have 380 employees. And this does not count in all the kindergartens and schools. So we are talking about 16 different departments that are in the government. So yeah, this picture is probably familiar to everyone. This happened similar to us as well. The COVID pandemic hit, and in our country, we had this special situation called out from the state, and almost overnight we were told to start working remotely. So it was really fast and rapid change. I have to say that our IT department did an amazing job, and not just giving people laptops, but actually helping them to get their screens and work chairs to home, go home with the employees, help them set up their Wi-Fi networks, etc. So it was like a time where people came together and made it happen somehow. We had some previous experience with remote work previously. We had a few people who were working remotely a few days a week, and but it was not something that was normal or like everyone did it. No, just a few. But it turned out that we could still manage. We could still offer services. We could still do our job, and rather well. We really need to point out the key enablers, especially for Estonia, because we're talking about the digitalization of services that we have in Estonia. The level is quite high. We have so many services already digitalized. And when we talk about the state level, then the situation there is even better. When we come to the local government level, then we still have some things that we haven't digitalized, or we're in the process of doing. But we discovered that thanks to these preset situations, we were doing rather well. And also, we already had quite a lot of remote work-friendly equipment. We had already laptops. I think it was about like 50-50. And then we discovered, okay, we need to change something to give everyone this possibility to move around a bit more loosely. And thanks to the flexible IT department, I think. What I wanted to also point out is what also Bo said, that we are working we're working with the euro, with the public money, and every time local government makes a decision that's somewhat unusual or points out, there's always the question about why are you doing this? Are we, the public, allowing you to do this? And it's, I think it's very, it comes out in Tartu very loudly. The public is critical, and they voice their thoughts rather well. So I think it's always a little bit more easier for a private company to make this sort of change rather than the public service. So I would have to say that the COVID was like major catalyst in that change, because thanks to that we got to try out the remote work, and nobody asked, why are you doing it? Can we allow you to do this? There was no question. You had to do it, otherwise the services would not keep on going. So that was the real help for us as well. So now we had this time period where we worked from home. We somehow managed it, but then we realized we had so many different challenges because of the rapid change. We did not have any framework, any legal framework, any how to work healthy in terms of physical and mental health. And our managers didn't also have the tools how to manage hybrid teams. It's a completely different situation rather than having everyone in the office. So it stood out that we have so many different opinions and thoughts about what the hybrid work is. That's why I have this rather funny meme here as well, because we have people who think that it's normal, everyone can work from home, but then we have people who think, I don't think he's working at all. He's probably watching Netflix and doing laundry. So we had to start dealing with all the different thoughts about remote work. And also in Tartu city government, we have 16 different departments. And because there was no framework how to do it, then the managers had to manage themselves. So it ended up so that we have 16 different remote working cultures inside our one organization, because it was all about what the manager thought. What was he allowing to do? What was he or she thinking about remote work? Whether this employee can work from home, whether this employee cannot. So it's not equal, and we also have to work with that. So, and also about the evaluation. We have also the other speakers also talked about the evaluation, or how to see if the work quality is the same, whether you work from home or from the office. So thanks to the remote IT project, it gave us time to think about these things. And we started off with the survey. Alisa mentioned data-driven decisions. That's what we're trying to do. So we carried out the survey among our employees. We had about 260 people answering. So it was quite a successful one. And it turned out that even now, a few years after the pandemic ended, we have quite many people still working remotely. I've put here some of our key challenges: the technology reliability, reduced team synergy, unequal access to remote work. So these were all the things that stood out, and it gave us a signal: these are the things you have to deal with and start dealing with. And in the last session, Sandra went about the IAP as well. So this IAP is our road to tackling these challenges. And about the future, I am very certain that the remote work is here to stay. But our job today is to make it as efficient and equal and quality as possible. So that's what we in the city government are tackling at the moment, to make the best out of it. One thing that's also I forgot to mention before was the private companies can somewhat offer a lot more opportunities for employees. It's much more difficult to give out compensations and all sorts of compensation packages in the public institutions. So this possibility to tell that if you come work with us, you can do remote work as well. It's a really big plus. So it's also important for having talented people coming to work for us, because public institutions also, they need a lot of talent as well. So anyways, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. We are a bit behind on our time, but I think we started a little bit later. But I invite all the speakers, if you can join me here. Yes, please. Ivana? And I would actually start by asking if there is any question from the audience. Yes, Lucian.
Just say your name and... Yeah, I'm Lucian from Bucharest District 6. I had some questions for all of you. I didn't forget anyone. And I'm not forgiving and forgetting anyone. Okay, for Mrs. Nog, did you reach the 20% goal you had for 2023 in terms of using of smart working? And the second one, you said that at some point the teleworking, you didn't want to differentiate in terms of performance. However, you differentiate in terms of health insurance because you said that any injury that comes when you are at home, it's not covered. So it's a bit but for me, it's a bit of contradiction. Okay, you want the performance, but you don't cover any injury. Okay, let's say the possible injuries. Okay, that is for. I'm finishing now, or you can ask. Okay. And for Bo, I love the idea of satellite offices. It's a great idea, but that's an appreciation, but it's not a question. The question comes. You said that you encourage people to work from home by paying them bills, for example, working from home because you get more talent in the city. But at the same time, you said that telework is not it's something like a favor the institution gives you. But I don't see it. From what you told, I don't see like a favor. It's like another way of working, another way of doing things. It's not a favor. It's just, for me. And for Kertu, I was curious to know about the specific trainings you have for managers, because you said that there is a challenge to manage hybrid teams. I wasn't aware until you told it, but now that you told it, some mechanisms inside my mind just started working. I think that it's a challenge, and I'm curious what you put into place to deal with that challenge. And a key benefit you mentioned was that teleworking supports mental health, but on the other side, you have studies that says the contrary, because teleworking, it's challenging in terms of team building, in challenging of professional, belonging to a certain professional group, and maybe sometimes the fact that you don't leave your house, it's also challenging in terms of social life. So yes, why do you consider that it supports mental health? Thank you very much.
That's a lot of questions. I hope you all remember it. Thank you, Lucian. You want to start?
Okay. Is it working? Yeah.
Arrow.
Okay. Good. So thank you for your questions. Yes, to your first question, we reached the target in a timely manner. So by the deadline that was set and agreed between the Croatian government and the European Commission. And since then, so it's been now 2 years from that, we have quite stable monthly hybrid work percentage. It's somewhere between 25 and 27 for the state, for the 60 state bodies that I mentioned. But what I can also say to this is that prior to starting, we also did some kind of assessment what kind of jobs and how many jobs in the civil service are actually fit for hybrid work. And it's around, if I remember correctly, around 60%. So you can see immediately there is still some kind of gap, that not everybody that could takes advantage of this. And it might be that they don't want to. Like I think Bo also mentioned, some employees have a preference not to do it and so on. But it could also be that some managers do not allow or maybe frown upon it. So that's there is still some room to reach more. But we have seen throughout, for the last 2 years, quite stable percentages, around 25-27%. And to your second question is, no, it's not like that, the insurance is not covered. It's covered if you work from home. But it's not a matter of the legal framework of hybrid work. It's the health and safety framework, and we looked at some cases where there would be claims for insurance if an injury would happen at home and so on. So this is covered. This is fine, but the legal framework for the health and safety does not allow. If the location is undisclosed, if you're in a coffee shop or if you're somehow, then it's not covered. So it's this distinction. But like I said, most of the civil servants choose to work from home, so they're fully covered for this type of injury.
Okay, thank you for your question. I will separate it into two answers because it had two separate questions for me in there. I think I was not clear enough on the two different perspectives I was bringing. So I started off with the perspective of the city of Roeselare, and then I tried to zoom out to what the Flemish regional government does. And so the system where they give benefits for working from home is from the Flemish government, same with the satellite offices. So it's separated from what we do as a city. And then the second question was about whether it's a favor or a right. I think it started off as a right, so you could demand to work from home or demand to work very flexible. But we changed the framework for it. And that's what I mean by changing it from a right to a favor is it's not guaranteed. If you need to be in the office to guarantee public services, to have someone at the front office, you have to come in. That will have priority over working from home. If you have physical meetings that require your presence, you need to come in. You're not allowed to work from home. But we can also, for example, if you don't deliver your outputs and we think you require some more coaching, like you need to be close to your colleagues who can help you out, that can also be a reason to say, no, in this period, we prefer you to come into the office. So it's not a right. You can't demand that you will work from home 2 days a week, depending on the situation. We try to guarantee it as much as possible, but it's a favor rather than a right, and that changes the perspective on how we approach it. So it used to be a right, and that led to a lot of, well, abuse is the wrong word, but managers felt like they couldn't intervene anymore because people said, no, but I'm working from home, so I'm staying home. But that resulted in, for example, people not being in the office in the key times, and they couldn't do anything to enforce that actual presence. So that's why we changed it in the way we, the narrative that we bring around it.
Like a possibility, I would say.
Yeah, it's an option. Let's say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lucien, for the questions. I will start with the first one, which was about the skills of managing hybrid teams. So when we started using Teams software, we also started with some trainings, and among these trainings we also share different kinds of good practices that we have gathered from our own departments and from other institutions that we have met. And this is one of the ways that we try to share these good practices that are working. And now, during this project, we also started with the training materials. Well, we now have the first one, but this is something that we're still dealing with. We are just yesterday, we had the good news that we can start using our new courses platform, and we will start to put good information and practices there. But it's rather different, and we have many managers that are very skilled, and they have this very wide view, and maybe they are also younger and more open to try out different methodology. So we try to get their methods out to the other managers as well. But I think it's an ongoing process. Yeah. And then about the mental health, and well, it's all about the balance and about the person's own ability to lead him or herself. Everyone has to know what is their own limits. Whether being at home makes a person feel alone or somehow secluded, then the person needs to understand it and make some changes. When it comes to remote work, I think the person himself is much more responsible about working and which sort of working methods are working for them. So I think it comes to balance, and it comes to being responsible for yourself and feeling what's right for you.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you for the question. I would actually like to take a little step back. We can see a big focus here on internal, focus on the employees, on managing the trust between the employees, the managers, and so on. I'm a bit curious on the side of the citizens. So we know that at the moment we see numbers rising of companies, private companies, asking for people to return back to the offices. So we can see a very vivid trend there, the return to office. Now, what is going on within that area, I do not want to discuss at this point, and what happens, but there is this trend, and citizens also see it. But on the other side, we see a trend rising within the public administration to encourage the remote work. I'm curious if you have measured on the trust. The level of trust of citizens towards the public administration is low anyways within Europe, across Europe and beyond. But I'm curious to understand if you have seen any changes going up or down. So on any side, if you are measuring that in any way. So towards the citizens, that communication. Maybe Bo, we can start with you this time.
Okay. We don't have direct numbers on like how citizens feel on hybrid working by city employees, but in general we have a lot of numbers or data on how they feel about public services, and they are actually quite satisfied with the public services. In Roeselare we did a very large-scale questionnaire a year or two ago, which they gave like an 8.2 out of 10 on average on the public services that we offer as a city. And we also try to have as much of the services digitally available for citizens. So we choose to have a model which has both the physical presence, also the phone presence, and the digital presence, and something in between. So we are also currently developing hybrid methods of reaching the city. So, for example, things like Teams calls, but it sounds quite straightforward, but it isn't necessarily, because it requires you to be able to authenticate the person who's in front of you, to have secure data connections with citizens. If you have online conversations with them, check whether, for example, this person is allowed access to these city plans, if they have the right to do that. So we are working on ways of digitalizing our services towards the citizens as well. And it seems like they are appreciating that. And they don't really see an impact from city employees working from home, because the services are always guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So in my city, I don't see a negative perception of citizens towards the hybrid working in government.
In an interest of time, very quickly, also Kertu, yes or no, is it going up or down? So are you monitoring it? Is it going on which level?
We are not officially monitoring it, but you know, I don't like to use the word gut feeling. It's not what we do, but we haven't seen a number going up. Like, I think it's very similar to what Bo said, that we guarantee a very good quality of services. We are non-stop working on bettering different procedures so that the services get better, so that the citizen doesn't feel that our work is somehow affected by us being working somewhere else or remotely.
Perfect. And even I understand your perspective is a bit different. So that's the city level, and this is on a ministry on a higher level. But the question goes the same: the public trust. Do you have any feedback from? And is it on which side is it?
We do monitor public trust and public satisfaction with key government services, like I mentioned in the presentation, and we just had new data coming in this past month. So this has risen considerably, and it's for the key public services. I don't know, I think around 55 key government services, but I cannot say how this correlates with the hybrid working, because there are no specific questions in the satisfaction survey. How do you feel about, you know, civil service working remotely? But I would have to say that this, what has been said already, I have to agree with that. As long as the services are of high quality and they're available, accessible, to citizens and to businesses, then that's the most important thing. And of course, you also have to keep this element. I mean, more and more services are being digitalized, but we have a policy within the government. It may be digitally first, but it's not digital only. So the services or the people, the citizens that want to access the service in person should be able to, and so the civil servant has to be there to provide the service.
Okay, perfect, thanks. I would allow one more question from the audience, just out of interest of time. Does anybody have any question? Yes, Marco, just a second.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. Marko Ricegovic, I come from the Association of Cities in Croatia. I'm interested in question for Ms. Kertu. I believe your colleague in earlier presentation mentioned that the city worked with the Estonian Association of Local Authorities in promoting the procedures and good practices in your city. Are you familiar more with the results of this collaboration? How other Estonian cities are reacting to Tartu experience, and do you have any info that some cities already introduced some measures or recommendations that you have in your city? Thank you very much.
So we have this NGO. What was it? I think it was remote work, a smart work NGO. So, and they are very closely working with different, also NGOs, but also very closely with different city governments and administrations, also on the state level as well. And they are actually the ones gathering a lot of data, a lot of good practices, and also they are the ones who are giving out sort of badge. You have to apply for it, and then they decide whether you are a smart work friendly government or an institution or even a business. So they have a lot of know-how, and they were actually the ones we ordered one of the trainings for our people as well. So I think they are doing a really good job. But we don't have a very good platform for sharing our different good practices. For example, during our project as well, we had to go out and really like find and meet and search for these good practices. And we used information from the Smart Work NGO that told us which of the administrations and institutions are doing really well with remote work, and then we went to them and asked. So I think we could do a better work with sharing our good practices, and this is something that could be done more. But we have like one go-to place. So.
Thank you. So I have one final question for all of you, but I would really kindly ask you to respond like in 2 words, literally, okay? So I know we have some cities in the room who are just now in the beginning of thinking about hybrid work within the city administration. So I would just ask, in your opinion, what is one practical step that you would recommend for the city as a starting point? So in 2 words, what would be the first with no explanation why? Whoever wants to go first, who has it already?
I can start. Technical equipment, that's like number one, otherwise.
Something else?
I would say work with your managers.
Okay.
Yeah, much the same. I mean, trainings I think are the key.
Trainings of people. Okay. So with that, I would like to close the first panel discussion. I thank you all for the inner perspective within the cities. 3 different countries across Europe. You have a lot of touching points, I would have to say, although a different approach to it. I thank you all for the questions and for the discussion. And I would actually ask you to stay put. Give us a minute before we start with the second panel. Is that okay? Thank you. Okay, ready for the new round? So we just explored a bit of an internal transformation of the public administration, how the hybrid work is reshaping the management, service delivery, and organizational culture inside the public sector institutions. But now we are going to shift on the other side, outward. We are going to look beyond the walls of city halls and the ministries, exploring how the cities themselves are becoming enablers of the change, how they can build the ecosystem that support the remote work, that attract the digital nomads, and nurture some new forms of entrepreneurship and innovation. So the remote work, as we heard throughout the day today, it's no longer a passing trend. It is reshaping where people live. It's reshaping how they connect and how local economies are evolving. And as this transformational stage is unfolding, the cities are playing an important role there. They are not just promoting themselves as destination, but they are creating the conditions that are allowing this talent, innovation, and opportunities to thrive. So this panel, the cities as enablers, supporting ecosystems for remote work and digital nomads, will examine how different actors, from the governments and co-working operations to civil society to research networks, so how are we all working together to build these ecosystems? We will explore what is needed beyond the marketing and the quick wins, the infrastructures, the networks, the incentives, regulations, hospitality, storytelling. We are going to explore all the ingredients that actually contribute to the vibrant and the inclusive, the resilient local economies. So I'm really happy. We are having 3 speakers joining in today, some of the leading voices within their fields. We are going to start with our first speaker, Mr. Jean-Yves Howard, founder of Coworking Europe, the largest community of coworking operations on the continent. After a successful career as a journalist, he became one of the leading voices of the coworking movement, and for the past 15 years now, has worked to shape and professionalize the industry as it moves into the mainstreaming. Right after him, we will have the speaker. We will hear from Mandy Franz, co-creator of Remote Workers Worldwide, one of the world's largest remote work communities with over 200,000 members. Named one of the LinkedIn top voices on remote work, Mandy brings both data and lived experience as a researcher involved in the RMAP project that we mentioned earlier today. She also brings both as a person, someone who has actually also worked remotely from the personal experiences as well from over 50 countries, including here in Dubrovnik, if I'm not mistaken. And right after her, we are going to hear from our speaker, Tracy Johnson, whose birthday is also today. Happy birthday, Tracy. A project director of tech in South Yorkshire, United Kingdom. Tracy has led 3 urban networks, actually, involving over 20 European cities, and her work has focused on how cities and regions can design strategic, collaborative approaches to support the tech sector and remote work growth. She was instrumental in the development of Barnsley Digital Media Centre and the town's digital campus, which is central to this really ambitious innovation agenda. So let's start with our first speaker. Yep. Can you just join in? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alisa. Hello, everybody. I met some of you yesterday at the restaurants already, so hi to all the others I don't know yet. Thank you for welcoming me and us in this beautiful city of Dubrovnik. I said to Alisa, I think people will hate me after my talk. I hope not, but don't throw tomatoes at me, because I will come with a different perspective than what I heard for part this morning. And also a disclaimer. So what I will tell you is the long tail. So there was 1 million exceptions, specific cases. You will all know different way to implement co-working in your hometown or regions. But here I'm speaking about the 80% of what is happening now. And a big part of what I'm doing now is explaining that co-working is becoming a true industry. It's still in the making, but it's growing, it's maturing, and it will be ultimately, we think, an industry as big as the hotel industry or the restaurant industry, for instance. So I don't know whether we... Do I control it from here? Okay. So this is who I am. Co-working Europe, we started it like a small meetup 15 years ago in Brussels, where I come from. Now it's the biggest co-working community in Europe, and we also connected with all the peers we have in North America, Australia, Asia, etc., where the movement is growing at the same pace or even faster. And so when we started, it was really a tiny model co-working. We all left the picture of co-working with 3 tables in the basements and 3 freelancers and enjoying being in a small community, etc. But now it's becoming much bigger. And I like to refer to this. Knowing that I was coming, I tried to remember what could be a good quotation. And I remember a friend of mine who was running ID Space in Lisbon. He said this like 6 or 7 years ago already. And I think it was a little bit of an enlightening moment even for me, because he was basically saying that now some of his customer, for instance, he was speaking about a Finnish company who had rented, I think was 30 or 40 desks in his Lisbon facility as a talent recruitment tool. So because they had to hire people from all over the place with the right skills, and a lot of people did say, okay, but Helsinki, you know, I'm not that keen to live there. They said, okay, but you can live in Lisbon. And they made this agreement with this big co-working space back in the days. And to me, it says a lot of things, this quotation. Number one, that you know, co-working is really for big companies as much as for small companies or freelancers. And the part of the employers, the bigger companies, is growing, basically. And speaking about the topic of today, so we spoke about hybrid working in your respective public organization, but we speak also about, and that's part of the goal, how can you bring remote workers in your respective cities and regions across Europe? So that's part of the answers to me. So when we think about, and again, co-working is a very big industry now, and if we speak about more the remote worker part, I think you will agree with me that we now see this. So before we had the short stay and we had the resident, and what happens in the middle, we have now the longer stay. And so longer stay can be 1 month, can be 3 months, can be longer. But basically people who are spending their holidays, but also working from where you are. So the question is, who are they? So I was telling also Alyssa that I like the 10 takeaways she shared just before, and especially the point of the personas. So remote worker is just one size fits all kind of persona. It's a lot of different personas. You have employees, you have freelancers, you have people who are backpackers and live on a shoestring. You have people who earn 10, 20,000 euro a month because they're highly skilled professionals. And so you have to encounter and figure out this whole range of people you have, and also figure out, okay, you want to attract and be appealing for remote workers, but who do you want really to bring into your city? So, and according to the answer, the offering and the answer in terms of offering will be totally different. So that's one of the key points. If there is something you can remember of today of my talk, is that co-working is a professional hospitality business. And I say professional hospitality and business. So today, if you want to indeed use co-working as a way to bring people in your town or your region, you have to address all those key elements. So meaning that if we speak about indeed the average kind of remote worker, can be an employee in a small or big company, they want standard. They want a co-working which looks like what they have at home. So they need not only to have a good Wi-Fi, okay, we all agree that it's something that we need, but they want professional furniture, professional access. They want daylight, they want nice buildings, they want things that they would, which would be the basic requirement they would have normally, at least for the people staying on the longer term. And again, speaking about long terms, within that you might have people who will agree to be in the basement with IKEA furniture, things like that. Still there, as far as the community is great and they love it. But for big chunk of the other people, co-working now had to be to reach a standard in terms of quality, in terms of hospitality, the same way you would think, okay, if you want to bring tourists in our town, we need to have accommodation industry which is the standard. So there is no reason to think co-working is different from that kind of perspective. Yeah. So here is some examples of the players that you see now coming in the co-working and hospitality or accommodation business. So, and we spoke a lot about hybrid working, but now in the hospitality industry, we speak about hybrid hospitality. I think you figure out what it means. So those are some examples, and I could have taken many more, but speaking about travelers or remote worker, this is a kind of facility of service they are expecting. So, for instance, the one in the middle is called the Social Hub. You might know them. Now on their website, they say, okay, do you want to be with us for 40 nights or for a year? And they are providing top-notch kind of facility with beautiful buildings, super huge, which includes the basic accommodation you can figure out, but also co-working space. So other example are Citizenham and some other example like that. So here you have another example of Freebie Hotels, a German company. So, and what they do is hotel and workspace. It's pretty clear. And speaking about connecting with the local ecosystem or the local player or local people you have, for instance, Citizen Ham now, they have this co-working facility which is actually a lobby with working facility. And you can, as a local, become a member of this co-working space as well. It's not only for the travelers. So they try to mingle and create a specific service locally as well as being a provider and a participant to the local economy. So, and the last example, this is also, we didn't speak about the co-living thing, but it's also a growing thing, a growing service, and more and more we mingle co-living and co-working for the same reason. And here is an example saying and stressing on the fact that this is becoming a true industry. They just raised $300 million to develop the network, and it's just one example. So this is my key message today. So it's not because you create a co-working space tomorrow in your area that all of a sudden you will have an ecosystem. So it's like the AI. We say now that AI is great to elevate your skills, or as far as your skills is there. It won't supplement the lack of skills you have in a specific field. And with co-working, the same thing. So co-working can elevate the existing strengths. So we spoke about Brindisi, we spoke about very cool example here. Indeed, if you have a skills, you have some kind of strengths in your area, and you want to use it and leverage it, co-working can help you with in order to achieve that. But indeed, you have to fulfill a number of requirements, and some of them are professional, hospitality, and business approach. This is my talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Mandy?
Perfect, thank you. Hi, everyone. Perfect, thank you. First of all, thank you for welcoming me back to Dubrovnik. I'm very excited to be back here after spending some time here as a digital nomad. My name is Mandy, and I'm here on behalf of the RMAP project AU. And before telling you more about our project, I'd like to share with you a bit of my remote work background story. So my professional career started in Dublin, Ireland, where I worked for one of the world's largest tech companies. And it was actually a red carpet deal. We had a rooftop barista bar, free food, free gym, even in-office massage therapist. But still, it wasn't enough. In 2018, I decided to quit my job to explore the world of remote work. And I booked a ticket to Bali, of all places, to Indonesia, to figure out how to make remote work work. Somehow, I landed my first freelance client within 30 days, and since then, I've been able to work remotely from anywhere. I haven't set foot inside an office ever since. So this remote journey, we started back then, brought me to beautiful places and to work remotely from beautiful destinations, such as driving the Highway 1 with one of my best friends in California, fulfilling a teenage dream. I spent 6 months in Medellin, Colombia, where my love for Latin dancing was born, taking salsa classes in between work hours. And I spent a lot of time actually in Croatia, among others in Dubrovnik, where I was a digital nomad ambassador back in 2022, exploring the beautiful places that Croatia has to offer as a digital nomad. And right now, I am currently based in beautiful Sintra, Portugal, which we chose as our home base. I'm originally from the Netherlands myself, but after traveling to over 50 plus countries by now, we decided to settle down in Portugal because we love the culture, the people, and of course the magical palaces. Now, in the meantime, being a digital nomad myself and working remotely for the past 8 years, I started growing a community on LinkedIn called Remote Workers Worldwide, which has now grown to the world's largest remote work community on LinkedIn, with over 200,000 members. So I highly recommend you to join if you're interested in remote work. It's a free community on LinkedIn. And last year, I had the honor to join the RMAP project AU, which is a 3-year Horizon Europe funded project where we assess, predict, and try to understand and map the effects of remote working arrangements to basically tackle the ongoing challenges of bridging the urban-rural gap in Europe and beyond. So we're now 1.5 years in. The last 1.5 years we spent doing a lot of research, which I'm very excited to share with you today some of our early insights. And then moving forward, we're developing a tool to visualize for policymakers in the EU what the impacts of remote work are to help them bridge the urban-rural gap in Europe and beyond. So, last summer actually, we kicked off our research with doing polls, so-called polls inside the LinkedIn community, where we asked for community-driven insights. Some of the answers didn't surprise me as a remote worker. So when we asked about productivity, which some of you already mentioned this morning as well, where 98% of the members voted that their productivity has increased or stayed equally productive, and only 2% felt less productive as a remote worker in comparison to in-office work. And the same for job satisfaction. So job satisfaction as well, more than 70% felt more or equally satisfied in their remote job compared to in-office, whereas only 3% voted feeling less satisfied. And here's where I believe it gets more interesting. So when we asked about the most important factor in a flexible workplace, actually more than double the amount of people voted the work location over the work schedule. And 69% of people voted for both factors, both location and the time flexibility as important. And surprisingly, which was relevant for our project, of course, in trying to bridge the urban-rural gap, when we asked for the ideal home-based location as a remote worker, over 80% voted for suburban areas and rural areas, and only 17% voted for urban regions. So this is, of course, a huge opportunity for depopulation and to have more people go to urban and suburban areas as well. Then, after that, we launched a large-scale survey with over 20,000 respondents from remote workers across the EU. And when we asked about the key amenities that they deem important as a remote worker, so specifically in urban and rural areas, I just want to highlight a few things here based on my own experience as a remote worker living in a suburban area in the heart of a natural park in Portugal. And I talked about this with a few as well during the break, but access to amenities on a daily life that you need on a daily basis. For example, access to public transportation. I live in Sintra, which is 45 minutes by car to Lisbon, the capital of Portugal. However, it would take me 3 hours to get to Lisbon with public transportation. So as a city, if you want to have remote workers go to suburban and rural areas, you need to invest in the transportation as well. Same for grocery stores. I didn't have access to an international or big grocery store up until last year. So I lived there for 1.5 years now. Of course, I think it's important to integrate with the local community, so local farmers markets, etc. But if you want to attract international people and really have remote workers stay for the longer term, it's important they have access to their international products, for example, as well. And another thing here, it's very small, I hope you can see, but that's deemed as very important and maybe not, they don't have access to right now as a remote worker in a suburban or rural area, is access to healthcare. So in my own experience, I have been dealing for 1.5 years trying to get a healthcare number in Portugal that gave me access to public healthcare. Now, making this easier as a city for remote workers to settle in the country for a longer term definitely helps to attract more remote workers to the destination. And then last but not least, I want to show you this chart when we asked about the top 5 reasons for relocation of remote workers inside the EU. And as you can see, surprisingly, Wi-Fi or digital infrastructure is not mentioned on the top. It's actually one of the last factors mentioned here. So the number 1 reason why people relocate is the quality of life. So that will be my key takeaway as well. Think about what does quality of life constitute of? So when remote workers go to a specific destination, how can you improve the quality of life for them? Because this way you don't only attract remote workers, but you also keep them. To finish off, maybe my key message here is think beyond digital nomadism. Digital nomadism is what attracts people to a destination, but think about how you can turn digital nomads into remote work residents. And really the final final note. With RMAP Project AU, like I said, we're now working on a tool to visualize all of the data that we've gathered in the last 1.5 years. So please keep an eye out on our channels, and we're also actually have our first publication in Nature Scientific Data that will be published soon. So keep an eye out. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Maddie. And now I invite Tracy to join me here.
I'm such a good girl. I'm bringing my timer as well to try and stick to time. Otherwise, you know, I could make sure that you're here all afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here, and I feel like a bit weird being the sort of final speaker here. It's an unnecessary sort of level of privilege. As Elisa mentioned, I've had the pleasure of leading 3 URBAC networks, and it's been wonderful this morning listening to cities talking about what they've really benefited from another URBAC network, how the action plans are going to make a difference, but even more special listening to the actions that have been tested and the impact that's already happening in cities. I think that's a massively powerful part of what URBAC is all about. So well done to everybody for surviving the process, but thriving in that process as well. I'm a firm advocate. As is probably obvious, I'm from a tiny little island called the United Kingdom, and we were once part of the European Union, but less said about that, the better today. So I'd kind of been trying to take a bit of a different perspective, I suppose, of really what does value mean in cities for digital nomads, based on the work that I've done over the last many years. So who am I? That's probably an awful picture of me, but I just wanted to show my URBAC credentials, I suppose. I've focused very much on the last 15 years of trying to build workspaces and develop workspaces that really inspire productivity and connection. And I think I've been doing that in a medium-sized city as opposed to a big city. And I have to say I wholeheartedly agree with everything that Jean-Yves was talking about in terms of co-working. But I think we need to recognise there is a difference between co-working in a big city and co-working in a small and medium-sized city. And a lot of that is to do with demand and habit. There isn't necessarily the habit so much of utilising co-working when you're in a smaller municipality type area. I've also been building innovation communities, which are fully integrated with the spaces, and that's, again, an important factor. The two things go hand in hand. I've been developing ecosystems. You don't lead ecosystems, you create the conditions for them. And again, that's integrated into that communities and workspace model. And importantly, I think, is the iterative process of all of that URBAC has certainly enabled, but that we continue to do. And that's sharing experiences and knowledge and listening to the knowledge and experiences of others, which is fundamental for me. We are always learning. We're never done in this life. So I've got kind of 3 main areas I wanted to speak to. And the first one for me is this idea of seamless workspace. And again, Jean-Yves touched on this, that you need those kind of low friction spaces to land when you are somewhere other than home or at your home base. And they absolutely need to be open, welcoming and accessible. And I think this whole thing about the digital infrastructure is a really interesting point that Mandy made about this being low on people's priorities. Well, you know fine well that quality of life will be impacted if the broadband's rubbish, don't we? Because we all get frustrated with it. So it's not necessarily an explicit priority, but when we don't have access to fast Wi-Fi, we get really grumpy. Hot coffee and basic amenities, it always sounds like a bit of a no-brainer, but I've been to many workspaces across many cities and many countries where you just can't get a really good cup of coffee. And it fuels people, it's what people want, but it also creates a real social connection, a hub point. And the workspace that I've led previously and developed over the years, the day that we made the decision to give free rent to a coffee cart was the best decision I've made in my entire career, because that just fueled the community aspect of things. And it was handy that it was right outside of my office as well. Flexible booking, again, these are straightforward things, but we, particularly when we're working at municipality level, we forget about some of this. This frictionless thing is really important, and our laborious bureaucratic systems we have as city authorities don't work for somebody that just wants to book a day in a co-working space. So putting the customer central on this is really important. And location, you need to be able to get there, don't you? Can't be in the middle of nowhere. Can't be dangerous, for women that might want to work there into the evening. It can't feel a bit stabby when you leave. It's got to feel good. It's got to feel cool. But as mentioned, a desk is a desk. And again, I found myself nodding away with Jean-Yves about the proliferation of IKEA furniture in co-working spaces, and the need to actually design a bit differently and for users is massively important. But facilitating serendipity feels like my life's work, trying to make sure that people can connect with each other. And I think this is incredibly relevant for remote working. And as a self-confessed remote worker myself, as part of leading EU networks, you do quite a bit of remote working. Being able to connect instantly into that human connective tissue of connections and knowledge is so powerful and so important, but it needs facilitating. It doesn't just happen. You need the coffee spot, you need the knowledge networks, you need events. We saw sort of in the early presentation about the new space in Dubrovnik, the need to have events there and do different things, and that invitation to join into that needs to be really open. It needs to be clear that everyone's welcome. Sometimes when we've got European funding or other funding for things, actually others aren't welcome because we're all about counting jobs in the local economy. But opening it up and being a bit flexible on things is really, really vital. And then office hours, that advice on hand, because remote working founders in particular, people who have started businesses, it's really, really important that they can connect with their tribe, with the people that can help them. So office hours is just a mechanism to allow you to do that and open up the space for even more people, really. And the last big thing I wanted to touch on here is talent. We've talked a bit about that, particularly from a public sector perspective, and how creating better public sector work environments really helps to diversify and expand the talent pool. But particularly in my world, in the tech ecosystem, the more we talk to our founders and our companies as they start to scale, the more the barriers to that scaling becomes about access to finance and access to humans. And even as we move into this, or move through rather, this age of AI, the need for human employees is still vital, and finding talent. So making sure that companies can access that talent in innovative ways is really, really important. And it's not without its challenge, but remote workers, we know they can bring this diverse and skills that perhaps you might not be able to get into your local landscape. And again, looking at this through the lens of smaller cities, and perhaps cities that don't have the amazing attraction of being coastal and being tourist hubs, but perhaps a little bit more, inland. It's sometimes companies in those spaces really need to bring in people quickly, and remote working, allow people to work where they want to work, is really important. Contracts and portfolio working, it's a great way to get that introduction into the businesses, and it can lead to that culture change in a company. If they try it, they like working with freelancers or remote workers, then that shifts that company's culture too. And flexibility, and I think that remote contracts is complicated, and don't get me started on how complicated it is in the UK to bring in international talent. But, there's a way here to kind of bypass some of that geographical limitation, but keep your talent pool really wide. And sometimes, when I'm working with founders and my team is working with founders, it's important to kind of have these conversations and really get people to understand where talent might come from, because we do get quite, deep into what our local talent pool looks like. Talent is global. So that's it from me. Hopefully that's been useful. Thank you again for the opportunity to share, and look forward to questions.
grab a seat immediately. If I can invite the both of the speakers here. Thank you. Thank you for your presentations. I really liked them, and I hope also the audience really appreciated the different perspective. I really appreciated having on the stage a perspective, also semi-city authority, I would say, but also a remote worker, and from the private sector, I would say a different kind of a perspective in the hospitality part. So I will start with one question, which I think it's quite bothering me and probably most within our audience, and that is moving from a pilot project or just a promotional campaign from like a short term to move to something more sustainable. So how do you see that from a different perspective? So from the city, from the remote worker, from the hospital, like it's also okay to say like the cities just get out, we will do the thing. That's also a valid response. But I'm actually wondering about your opinion in a sense of what do you think is the biggest barrier to move from just the piloting to something more sustainable? What are the challenges, or what do you see as a possibility? What do you think as an advice to all the city representatives how to actually manage this? You want to go first? I see you. Go.
I have a strong opinion on this, so I love this question, if you don't mind. From a remote worker's perspective, so I touched upon one thing, which is it took me 1.5 years to get my healthcare number. So talking about sustainable remote work strategies, the promotion is what attracts the person to the country. So I've been a digital nomad, I guess. I've been traveling to a lot of countries to taste the digital nomad lifestyle, to see what it's like, kind of taste of each country. And then yesterday at dinner, we also had this conversation with a few here, like at some point you're done with traveling full time. So I think many remote workers, and actually my community was first called digital nomads on LinkedIn, and we changed to remote workers worldwide because people said we don't feel like a digital nomad because I don't travel full time. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for cities to attract not only the digital nomads, but then also what happens after that once they've explored the city and they want to stay. So making it easier for them to get their healthcare number, to get their tax number, the social security, how they can really integrate in the local community, because that's eventually also what I think, also we as remote workers want, to integrate really with the culture and the community, to learn about the language, etc. So really, I like that customer journey that you mentioned as well. Think about once a person enters the country, how can they, as easy as possible, get access to banking, to healthcare, etc., all the facilities beyond just the co-working space and Wi-Fi, which of course is needed as well.
So your question was also more about creating a facility, or
exactly.
Okay.
But moving beyond just piloting. Yeah.
Yes, I was. Thank you. I have a strong opinion about it as well. Having witnessed so many publicly supported co-working projects, and again here I have to say that there are exceptions, but most of the time it's a big accident because you had a community manager which was fantastic and so committed and incredible, but many times we see, and it's not only in places like Dubrovnik or Madeira or some other places, but in remote cities and villages in France, in Spain, in Italy, you see a new facility inaugurated by the mayor with 5 tables and a big blue flag on it because funded by the EU. And 3 years later, you read an article that the space stopped because the funding stopped. And there is no work on the sustainability of the project. So to me, to be honest, that's a shame. And it has to do with the way it's supported and understood, co-working. And the industry is guilty of it as well, because initially, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, it was also communicated all about the startups, the ecosystem that could start off the co-working spaces, and you can create and meet your new co-founder and become the new I don't know, Atlassian or whatever. And so there has been a lot of fantasy around it, and we still have the leftover of that here. It's still very present, unfortunately, and also in some policy making project or policy making things we see out there. So having the public sector involved to kick off things, yes, sure. But again, they will. To me, they have to behave like an investor, alongside with other players, and think about the next steps once the funding. So in some areas, so and I created a co-working space 13 years ago in my small town with public funding. But after 3 years, the deal was clear. You have to make it sustainable. And we were part of a scheme which was also supported by European Union. And out of the 8 projects that have been supported back then, all the other 7 either closed up or had to rely on the funding from the municipality itself, not from the European Union anymore. So it doesn't help the cause to still work like that. So to me, the public authorities have to be enablers. We spoke a lot about branding city, but brand it on real strengths, not make up some kind of storytelling about we will be the new Silicon Valley of I don't know, Baden-Württemberg or whichever region it is, but really cultivate your strengths. And if your strength is low cost, if your strength is easy access to, I don't know, kind of water sports somewhere, if your skills or your strengths, as opposed to other places, is maybe that you're just easygoing and you can easily access other kind of stuff that just have to do with the quality of living, just bet on that. And if you want to have people, not only remote worker, but people who want to create businesses out of your city, so you need to work on another sides, build up the skills and the craft and the niche that you can be strong at, and not trying to say that because you have there. If you do that, you have to compete with London and Mountain View and Tokyo. So not the best things to do, maybe. Yeah.
I think I could probably bore you all to death about this whole question, but I think that I've got 15 years of lived experience of trying to sort this kind of problem out. We too, so in my Barnsley experience, which is a medium-sized city in the north of England, that came out of a huge industrial decline, and we did use a lot of EU money to build a very, very beautiful architect-designed, fantastic space that was designed as an incubator. And for the first 7 years, it never really exceeded 50% occupancy. We put the management of that out to the private sector. There was nothing wrong with the private sector provider, but the market wasn't there. And I think this is the key thing about big city versus medium city as well, is the private sector will fill market opportunity gaps. If there's co-working commercial providers and they can spot an opportunity in a city, they will be in there because it's an opportunity to build custom, make money. That's how the market works. In smaller cities or cities that are perhaps more economically challenged, that's not going to happen. And we need to be realistic about that. And the public sector can step in, but the risk is the public sector steps in, well, exactly as we've discussed. It builds a building, it cuts a ribbon, somebody pats themselves on the back, and then nobody thinks about what happens next. And for me, the what happens next, you have to recognise how complex, how long-term, how expensive, and how integrated that plan has to be. So it's not a case of scratching your head and wondering where the next customer is coming from. It's about thinking, what is the role of this facility in an ecosystem, in a knowledge-based ecosystem in this city? How does it connect with other knowledge-based ecosystems? Where do we need to intervene because there's market failure, and where do we need to step away as the public sector and let the market convene, and recognising that maybe years 1 and 2 we need to be heavily involved. Years 3 and 4 maybe we can step back and focus elsewhere, and then years 5 onwards there might be a commercially viable opportunity, but there may also not. But that doesn't mean the building and the ecosystem in the community is to be abandoned. There has to be a really long thread through it. And we've tried a lot of things in the work that I've done. We've experimented. I've been really fortunate that the local authority that I was based in and still am based in, but working for the region, had a really strong risk appetite. We were so far behind everybody else in terms of our economy that the only thing we could do was either fade away or take a risk. So politicians as well as executive leaders all backed some of the small scale actions that we tried to make a difference, to build that sense of community, visibility, the connectivity into Europe that we did through the networks and programs. All of that makes a difference, but there's a lot of plates to spin, and we forget how complicated and systems-based that is, and we forget it at our peril as cities. If we only plan for the next cycle of funding for the short-term gain, we're not going to get where we need to be. So we need to embed a bit of risk culture, we need to think a little bit longer term, but also build in the agility to respond to what the market's telling us.
Actually, the battery is low here. Thank you. We're going to share. It's okay. We're going to share. But I would like to open the space for the audience. Give a bit of a time to you. So let me just see if you have any questions for our speakers. Daniela and...
I have a question for Mandy, because you've done a lot of remote working in different places. So can you maybe give us some advice? Is there a city, place that has been really good at taking in remote workers? And maybe we should look into them and what they've done.
It's a very good question, actually. And actually, I'm the right neighbor, I think, of one of those destinations, Lisbon. We also talked about this with a few during the break, which is now one of the top destinations for remote workers. It's only 45 minutes from where I currently live. And yeah, they are very, very popular. They've grown a lot in the last 2 years. And I don't know if you know Nomad List, or Nomads, I think by now it's called, where you can see all the top destinations. I think, yeah, they invest a lot of time in co-working, in cafes where people can work from. And actually they have the opposite kind of side. They now have the problem that they have too much digital nomads. So the housing prices increase. And then there's no integration with the local community. So how do they deal with that? So I think there should be a balance as well. But yeah, they definitely invested in the community, in the co-working spaces, all the facilities like the Wi-Fi, etc. But yeah, is it sustainable? I'm not sure, because now there's the mismatch with the local communities. I think it's really important to have that conversation, and that's what I'm trying with Sintra, for example, which I believe is still a hidden gem for remote workers. So don't tell too many people. But yeah, trying to not duplicate Lisbon, because I don't want it to be the next Lisbon. So how can we grab the good facilities or the good ideas from Lisbon, but then maintain that authenticness, because that's also what attracts me to the destination.
Yeah, just to complement what you were saying, you agree that it's because the demand was there that the co-working offering grew, not the opposite. So, so one city I know a little better is Porto, because we have collaborated with them, and they all of a sudden, as this rush of remote worker were establishing there, and so I think Portugal is very popular for that. Spain as well. So the fastest growing co-working market in Europe now is Spain. I know not because they have the biggest IT ecosystems in the world, but because people want to live in Malaga, Valencia, etc. for some obvious reasons. So it grew the demand. So because all the investors figured out indeed there was a new need, and you have some of the best, nicest co-working spaces in Europe now, which are opening up in all across Spain. So and regarding Porto, the way they had a lot of very small co-working spaces. You might know some of them. And now the city is discussing with the big players. So Social Hub, for instance, I mentioned here, has opened a big space there. They've been discussing with WeWork, which was the iconic co-working operators, which went through some troubles, but now they came back from the death and they are live and kicking again. And and meaning also that they start to discuss with the hotel industry, as I mentioned, as it's hard to make it profitable. It's not London, it's not Amsterdam, but still you have very strong providers and hospitality experts who can have that this services, quality services on top of what they're already offering, especially off season in some cases. So and the difference, just to end with that, was the fact indeed that you have the local population which kind of feels squeezed between all those foreigners coming in and taking the flats and pushing up the prices. If you go through those kind of players, they invest locally. The difference with Airbnb and some other players.
I was just going to add that I think Lisbon is an excellent example of a sort of scaling city where there's a really diverse sort of workforce base and really global workforce base there. But I think we need to recognise the amount of public money that has gone into developing the Portugal model as well, and the commitment at leadership level that's been there. And we don't always benefit from that in some cities, in some regions, in some countries. But I think Portugal, when you sort of zoom out, has made a quite long-term strategic decision to invest in the knowledge economy, in skills, in a distributed system as well. So it's not all actually sequestered in Lisbon. It is actually quite well distributed across Portugal. And they've led with money and leadership. And I think that's important. So, we're now on, I think it's the third Web Summit that's taking place in Lisbon shortly. And that convenes thousands of people in the knowledge economy, particularly in tech. So, backing things like that to create those big sort of visible moments is really important. But the long-term bit is not to be forgotten, because it's not about whether it's public or private money. It's about there's a commitment and there's a long-term view there, which kind of, I suppose, reinforces what we were saying before, that you need to have a bigger vision. What will be interesting is what happens next, So kind of that's worked. How do you sustain it? How do you pivot and change it and evolve it and benefit Portugal PLC, I suppose, not just individual cities?
Thank you.
You start to reply, because I would like to ask about the social cost of this kind of activity, because Portugal is a good example, but we have many others when the people is looking for a good life or style, but actually is bringing for the community host not so good style of life. It's increase the price of the house and all the rest. So if you start to investigate in this, what a recommendation for the municipality to don't make the same mistake of other examples.
Okay. So a little bit what I said with Porto, for instance. So now you compete with the existing infrastructure. So you have the local population, and you have foreigners, and then you have a bottleneck, because they fight for the same flats and for the same apartment, and ultimately local people have to flee the city and go to the countryside, and it creates unrest or force. So in Barcelona, we all saw that. I don't know if Dubrovnik is the same situation, but but what if all those players providing with all the services, but dedicated to foreign and remote worker, come with investment, so to build new facility, to create better infrastructure. So it opens up and within the whole offering, and hopefully it decrease the pressure on the prices for the local community, and in addition create additional jobs, additional service, etc. So if there is a virtual model, I might think about this. I don't know, but there might be some others, but I think it could come through that, because this is a situation we see a little bit everywhere. Speaking about Malaga, or I think in Greece, I read some things similar. I don't know, in Crete it was the same, but so this is definitely something that can help also to consider alternative way to what is existing today.
I mean, I would say certainly from a sort of housing perspective, having a strong policies around social housing, and again, it comes back to the integrated nature of these things, of only playing in one space is always going to have a negative impact on other areas if they're not properly considered. So we need to be thinking about these things at the point at which big strategies, big plans are really made. What is the potential fallout? And I think, again, just coming back to the tech economy, because that's kind of where I live, recognising, the salaries in that space are probably going to be significantly higher than the average salary in some cities. So therefore affordability for somebody moving in with a role like that is going to be very different from a locals. So yeah, making sure that those conversations happen around housing, transport, the social conversations is absolutely fundamental. And I think, we see in without wanting to dwell on global politics, this kind of rise of the private sector position, I suppose, but the public sector is there for a reason, and it isn't, despite what people sometimes feel, it isn't to create bureaucracy. It is to kind of really think about our cities and think about our citizens and the role in it, and there's a massive role the public sector can play. Whether it does or not is debatable at times, but I think, it's the social housing piece, or the thinking about what levers do we have to pull. In the UK, we have something very sexily called Section 106, which is a policy whereby developers have to give up a certain proportion of cash into the locality to develop services, for example. Those are some of the levers most public sector operations have. So it's making sure they're used creatively, I think.
Did you want to comment?
Actually, I still wanted to comment back on our earlier discussion as well. I think a couple of points that we all touched upon. The long-term strategy of Portugal to attract remote workers, and your question of what is something that Portugal maybe did well. And like you said as well, there was already the demand, and that's why the co-working grew. I think one of the things that Portugal may have done well that have attracted a lot of demands and digital nomads is they had a program called the NHR program. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. But basically giving tax incentives for certain professions. So in terms of talent attraction as well, Portugal actually has a list of what professions they want to attract, and those were able to get tax benefits for 10 years. So I think if you tie that strategically with entrepreneurship, with the type of professionals, so that you attract the right people, and that they also invest in the local community. For example, when I moved to Sintra, I started an entrepreneur group in Sintra with locals as well, where every week we met up, and then we had weekly sessions and giving workshops to each other where we did skill sharing, etc. But attracting the right talent, I think, to the destination is something maybe that's also worth to mention.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Joel Viana. I'm the project manager from Madeira, Câmara de Lobos municipality, Portugal. I have a question to Mandy, because when we saw your study, I realized that I think 40 or 48% of remote workers would like to be a remote worker in a rural area. But when we are talking about the remote workers, you said the top of the places that they choose. I can see, okay, so Lisbon, we talk about Lisbon, Porto, Barcelona, Bali, and some other places. And none of them are rural areas. In your opinion, what do you think? They would like to, but they are not going. I'm thinking about my municipality, for example. The focus of my integrated action plan is in the city, but we have also several rural areas. And yes, I would like to think to have those kind of remote workers working there. But in your opinion, why they want to go, but the reality they are not going?
That's the interesting part, I think. Thanks for the question of the study, because so obviously, and also speaking from my own experience, they rather work from nature, from quiet areas. But they don't have the facilities that they need. So that's why I showed the slide before with, they need access to public transports, to groceries, to healthcare, which are now currently not yet offered in those rural areas. So with our map, that's what we try to prove with our data. What are the key facilities that are needed for remote workers to move and settle in rural areas? Because the demand is there, but they just need the facilities to be able to empower them.
Thank you. One final question.
Yes, hello. My name is Renja Droshu. I'm from Heraklion municipality. I'm the head director of programming, planning, and ICT in the municipality. And I'd like to share my experience in regards to what you were saying with the nomads wanting to live in rural areas. We also had this in our Urbak local group, and talking with digital nomads from several co-working spaces that we had visited. They do prefer working and living in rural areas because they feel like they're closer to the culture and closer to the people, the small communities. But of course, they need transportation, easy access to the city. So we are currently in discussion with the public transportation company to see how we can expand the bus routes, the public transportation going towards the suburban areas.
Thank you. I think there are a lot of topics opened up and we can continue with the discussion, but the lunch is over there and I'm having some pressures by the hosts. So I would ask you the same like in a previous panel, in like literally 2 words, 3 words, given advice, the final thought so we are having here medium and small size cities. So keeping in that perspective and from your point of view, one advice as a final thought in 2-3 words, please. You can go first.
We spoke a lot about the branding. So the branding is the outcome of a deep reflection normally about what you want to achieve or how you want to be perceived as a city or a region. And the rest is just execution. And co-working is just one tool among others.
For me, I think it would be to think beyond digital nomadism and think about that customer journey to transform digital nomads into remote work residents.
And building on that, I'd probably say putting customers, i.e. humans, at the heart of a long-term agile plan.
And with that, we are going to close the session for today. But I do invite, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you for the perspectives. Before leaving the room for lunch, I would invite Angela to just give us a couple of information. The housekeeping information.
Housekeeping information. Thank you all for a very productive day. Now we're heading to lunch, which is held down there in Hard Rock Cafe. My colleague is waiting for you. And then at 3 o'clock, internal session for project partners only continues here. And the rest of you have some free time, and then see you again here at 4:30 for the city tour, who signed up for the city tour. And the dinner is at 6:30 at Banje Beach, East-West Club, and you will get Google Maps link in the group, and that's about it. For those of you who are coming back to the session after the lunch, you can leave your stuff here.
I'm just gonna mention that for those of you who will be joining the city tour, the guide will let you know where the meeting point to go to the restaurant is or will be, and Angela will be there to guide you. However, I'm going to send you the location in case you are not attending the city tour. So thank you.